Hello, my name is Mike Obsatz, and I'm doing a short video on the fatherly heart, which is celebrating all fathers and Father's Day, and what does it mean to have a loving fatherly heart. This is part of a larger workshop, and I'm going to use several books for this that are very, very helpful. One is called The Hidden Spirituality of Men by Matthew Fox, and the other one is called Kids Are Worth It, Giving Your Child the Gift of Inner Discipline by Barbara Coloroso. And these books have in them the recipe for the loving, heavenly heart, fatherly heart, the idea of what does it mean to be an authentic man who is a dad. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and this is for all fathers of biological children, it's for fathers of adopted children, it's for fathers who never had biological or adopted children who are fathering in a role in America, in the world, as far as supporting and helping the growth of others. So there's lots of ways of doing fathering, and it's not just a biological kind of father. Matthew Fox in The Hidden Spirituality of Men talks about the fatherly heart in the following way. The authentic fatherly heart is open to deep and ancient stories of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. He provides for the survival of the tribe, and he fosters an energetic curiosity of and passionate engagement with the natural world. He teaches sons and daughters how to, quote, hunt, unquote, in the world, and how to trust their own hunter-gatherer instincts when they are on their own. The fatherly heart celebrates the spiritual warrior, comfortable with expressing both joy and grief, and knows and creates rituals that can hold these emotions in the home and community. In this way, children grow up emotionally whole, aware, safe, and expressive. A fatherly heart does his inner work and has gone into grief and loss, into initiations of many kinds, and does not hide this from his children. That's quite a lot right there about what it means to have a fatherly heart. A healthy father is not silent about sexuality, its power, and its dangers, but discusses it openly and models healthy and responsible sexual expression. A healthy father takes delight in showing his children what a healthy life entails and how to eat healthy, cook for themselves, grow food, exercise properly, and honor the body in all its wonders and amazement. And the healthy father instructs by example how to respond to life creatively, artistically, and compassionately. So, in a way, to have a fatherly heart is to be an authentic man in one's own wholeness, and then to be able to teach and pass that on to children, grandchildren, and others about what does it mean to be a loving, compassionate, whole person who is male in the world. And this can include all kinds of men. So it can include young men and older men. It can include gay men and straight men. It can include able-bodied men and men with limited bodily capacities. It can include lower class, middle class, upper class, whatever you want to call it. A diversity of men of all races. It sort of transcends some of the distinctions and differences that we use to talk about people, and sort of says this supersedes the differences and shows what wholeness is. And it's basically the commitment to wholeness and in the encouragement of wholeness and authenticity for everyone. So here are some examples from Matthew Fox, The Hidden Spirituality of Men, of ways in which a father has qualities of a fatherly heart. The fatherly heart cares, whether it's expressed in kissing or hugging. The caring is expressed in countless ways, or putting bread on the table, or providing shelter and educational opportunities. So caring is the first quality of a fatherly heart. Giving and generous. The fatherly heart is a giving heart, a generous heart. Children can bring out the best in a man, which is his capacity for giving and generous giving. This giving just does not necessarily mean the giving of material goods. It can be the giving of love, the giving of compassion, the giving of listening, the giving of understanding. So another thing that the fatherly heart does, it's receptive and it listens. So a man with a fatherly heart will listen to others, will be present with others, will pay attention to the small nuances of what is going on in the conversation, and will continue to love through all of that. It is the open, receptive heart that acknowledges that people are different individuals and they will experience life differently. We need listeners in our lives. The fatherly heart also looks toward the future and creates vision and encourages younger people and others to have vision for what they would like in life. So in doing so, it's an encouraging heart. So encourage has the word courage in it. So the fatherly heart teaches encouragement and courage. The courage to be yourself, the courage to be who you are in the world, and to survive in sometimes a world that has many challenges. He calls it, Matthew Fox calls it, a sometimes hostile world. And the spiritual warrior is part of the Father's repertoire. And that means that the encouraging coming from the heart is an actual spiritual experience. Another thing the fatherly heart does is it sees the big picture. It teaches others to see beyond the short term, the short distance, to the larger images, the larger ideas, the larger connections. And one of the ways that the fatherly heart does that is by listening, but also saying, let's understand this. What are different ways we can look at this? Are you really sure it means this? And maybe part of the fatherly heart means that you don't always have to be right. The father does not always have to be right, and the children, or anyone who's learning from the father, is not necessarily always going to be right. So it's getting past the idea that one knows everything and one should be in charge and telling others who they are and what they should be. So it is a non-judgmental fatherly heart. So seeing the big picture, the fatherly heart not only looks to the future, draws lessons from the past, but fatherly heart is not petty or tribal or sectarian. And that's kind of an interesting idea. The fatherly heart transcends labels and categories. So it moves to an understanding of the whole world, the whole universe. Everyone is one with everyone else, and everyone is lovable. The fatherly heart is playful and affectionate and shares a love of life, imagination, and problem solving. So that's really interesting. So there's a cognitive aspect of the fatherly heart, there's a spiritual aspect of the fatherly heart, there's a physical aspect of the fatherly heart, and there's an emotional aspect of the fatherly heart. A good father protects. And it's interesting that you would protect others by sort of watching out that they don't run into the street when they're really little, or really giving people options and saying, are you sure you want to do this? It doesn't seem safe to me to do this. So being aware of the safety of oneself and others is really very important for the fatherly heart. A father instructs, a father teaches. Children need parents for these teachings. They need fathers. Fathers help children find their boundaries, set boundaries, and learn inner discipline. And it's interesting that Matthew Fox talks about inner discipline as very, very important. And inner discipline is knowing from the inside out what is the appropriate thing to do in situations. It's taking responsibility and being accountable for one's actions. And that is exactly what Barbara Coloroso wrote about in her book, Kids Are Worth It. She writes about giving your child the gift of inner discipline. And one way you do that in what she calls the backbone family is you teach a child to love themselves, to be strong, to handle things, and that they can figure things out. That they also are then responsible and accountable for what they do. So it's interesting that both of these books don't directly mention the Old Testament and the New Testament, but they both refer to it in terms of accountability and grace and love. So the fatherly heart combines both of those things. Barbara Coloroso in Kids Are Worth It says, every day there are 6 critical life messages given to a child, coming from a motherly heart or a fatherly heart, but we're talking about the fatherly heart. And they are, I believe in you, I trust you, I know you can handle life situations, you are listened to, you are cared for, and you are very important to me. So the first part of those is about, I believe in you. And I think people really need that kind of support from a fatherly heart. The idea that someone believes in them, that they believe that they will be able to do and be whatever they decide they want to do and be. That is what the fatherly heart offers people through teaching, mentoring, supporting, listening, loving. I believe in you, I trust you, I know you can handle life situations. Now, I know you can handle life situations doesn't mean I won't help you. It simply means I will support you, but you also have within you the capability of figuring things out. And that is very different than doing things for people where they don't have to do anything. So it's a team effort with the fatherly heart. It's we together create. When are you done being a father? My oldest daughter is 50, and she still asks me for things. What do you think of this, Dad? Or how would you look at this, Dad? And it's interesting because at 50, I'm 52 and she's 50. That's my big joke. She knows enough and trusts me enough to still look to me for support. And I provide a fatherly, loving advice giving only when asked, but also if she wants to know what I think, she has to ask me what I think. But I will tell her what I think. You are cared for. You are very important to me. Now, being very important is really interesting. Because lots of times kids get the message that they're not that important, that they're not that lovable, that they don't deserve time, energy, support, listening, and so on. And I think it's very, very important for a fatherly heart person, a person who's being a father with a heart like that, to say, you are so valuable to me, I will give you time, energy, and listening and support. I will dedicate time for you, no matter what your age, no matter what your situation. So here's a couple of things about what you do. You create an environment conducive to creative, constructive, and responsible activity when they're small. And there are rules that are simply and clearly stated, and consequences for irresponsible or are natural and reasonable. They're also simple, valuable, and purposeful. So in other words, children growing up with a father who has a fatherly heart are going to think about their behavior in advance before they actually do something, and think about what are the consequences and who is this going to affect. So for example, If we're environmentally conscious, we have to pay attention to what are we doing to the earth? What are we doing to the climate? What are we doing to other people? What are we doing to people who live in poverty? What are we doing? And looking at our institutions and systems and see where they may be hurting other people. So a fatherly heart is a compassionate heart and does care a lot about everyone. So there is no person at the bottom who just doesn't deserve our time or attention. There's always time and attention needing to be spent on solving the world's problems. And the world's problems come from people not feeling lovable and not having access to resources. And that has been historically what has gone on for centuries. There are people who haven't felt lovable and haven't had access to resources. It's done through systemic, like racism and other systems. Children are motivated to be all they can be. That's interesting. The idea of you're there to motivate. You're like a coach. You say, yes, you can do it. And that's the encouraging thing that Matthew Fox was talking about. Children receive lots of hugs, smiles, and humor, and they get second opportunities. They get second opportunities. So the idea that a fatherly heart is forgiving. And if you make a mistake, you have another opportunity to make it right. So it's interesting, a fatherly heart acknowledges the wounds that we have, the insecurities that we have, and sometimes the behaviors that we do that are not perfect or not excellent behaviors. But you get more chances. Love is unconditional. And one of the main things about children is they're taught how to think, not what to think. So there's a lot of emphasis on encouraged to listen to their own intuition, be spontaneous and creative, and to reason through problems, really learning about the higher levels of thinking. So this way, children are supported. Parents give this message, I like myself, I can think for myself, and there's no problem so great that it can't be solved. So one of the things about the fatherly heart is it is empowering. It empowers others to know who they are and love themselves. And I'm going to share with you just a little bit about my own dad, David Obsatz, who was a poultry farmer, and I grew up on a poultry farm. And he used to tell me things when I was working with him, that he was a mason and a Shriner, and that was very important to him because he hung out with other men who did a great deal of good in the world, Shriners Hospitals for Children, a lot of charity work, and so on. So he was more than a poultry farmer. He was a man of principle. So we would be working in the chicken coops, and they are smelly and uncomfortable, and I would always complain about working. It's like, why do I have to do this? Other kids are out playing, and I have to work. And he would say, well, you like to eat, don't you? And I would say, yeah. He would say, well, if you don't work, you don't eat. He was basically teaching me a work ethic when I was like 7 years old. And I resented it. Like, what do you mean I have to work? But it really has done a world of good for me over a long period of time, realizing that I have to work for things. You get nothing for nothing. My mother and father both used to say that. The other thing my father would say is, if you have your health, you have everything. So if you have your health and you feel good and you are fortunate, you have a great deal for you. He would also say things like, think before you speak. Once you say something, it's out there, and it's easier to be silent first than to have to apologize later. And that was very interesting because it has stayed with me, but I don't necessarily blurt out the first thing that comes to my mind. My father liked being his own boss, and one of the things on the chicken farm he would say is, chickens don't talk back. So that was interesting that he liked being independent, and he taught me about independence, the idea of valuing doing things that I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of my life doing the things that I've wanted to do because my dad and mom both, but my dad set a good example of doing what he wanted to do. He encouraged me to stay in school, and he also taught me to respect my mother and all females and everyone. But one of the things that was really very crucial for my own dad was the idea that you treat other people the way you would like to be treated, and that nobody's better than anyone else and nobody's worse than anyone else. The idea that we're all worthy inside and we all are worth caring about. So I wanted to just share with you some of these ideas about the fatherly heart, because I think that we need to appreciate the beauty of masculinity and manhood and see it as a holistic, energetic, loving, compassionate, emotional, physical, cognitive, and spiritual way of being in the world. So thank you very much.